Hey there. Today I want to talk to you about incorporated employees. What does that mean? So incorporated employees are one of those things that we don't really come across too, at least I don't come across too often. And generally, you want to do your best to not be an incorporated employee. But what that means is that you would be an employee of the company. You would be deemed to be an employee if the corporation did not exist. So you want to think about things like, are they your only client? Do you use your own tools? What kind of control do you have over your job? Are you able to choose your own hours? Do you get to decide how you do the job, or are you told by your employer how you do it? Does the employer pay out benefits for you? How integral are you to the employer or the client's business? Are you like a frontline worker who probably doesn't have any impact on the company at all, or are you upper management? You want to look at, are you able to outsource to somebody else, or do they require you to actually be there? Do you have to go into work at their office? All of these things, there's not one element here that would deem you to be an incorporated employee. It's a holistic view of the relationship, and the CRA does take into account the intent of the relationship. So if in your contract it specifically states that you are not an employee, that you are a subcontractor, then they will take that into account. That will be the lens for which they look at all of those other factors that I talked about. But if the relationship is very clearly an employee-employer relationship, they will deem this corporation to be an incorporated employee. And what that means is the company is then a personal services business. PSBs have different rules, and they are less desirable than having a regular corporation. A PSB means that you cannot deduct business expenses except for the salaries and wages of the specified shareholder. So if you're the only shareholder, that's you. The cost to the incorporation of benefits and allowances, legal expenses for incurred for collecting amounts owed to the company, and amounts paid by the corporation in connection with the selling of property or negotiating of contracts. Those are the only things. So there's no meals or vehicles or like if you had to buy supplies or any of that, you can't deduct any of that if you're deemed to be a PSB, a personal services business. So that alone makes it less desirable than having a regular corporation, having a relationship with a client that is truly a subcontractor relationship, because you can't make any deductions, or you can make very few deductions for the corporation. The other thing that makes it less desirable is that you don't qualify for the small business deduction. So the tax rate on PSBs is a lot higher, like 44.5%, I'm pretty sure is the rate, which is a lot higher than the 12%-ish, depending on the province you're in, that you would pay with the small business deduction. So that's a significant difference. Those numbers are, like, again, depending on what province you're in, but the small business deduction makes a significant difference in the tax rate. So if you're deemed to be a personal services business, you have higher tax rate and you can deduct way fewer expenses. So not good. Usually what we do in that case is every dime that the company takes in, we will just salary out or bonus out to the employee, to the specified shareholder, because you're going to pay a significant amount of tax on that amount of money if it stays in the company, usually more than you would on the personal side, depending on how much money we're talking about. So is it worth it to get it out of that corporation? And you can't deduct any other kinds of expenses, so you might as well get it out of there and into the hands of the taxpayer. So usually it's just a flow-through entity if it's considered a personal services business. If you find yourself in that situation, I would really, really I would want to go to the employer and say, hey, is there any way that you can just make me an employee of the company? Because usually the employer wants to have an incorporated employee, or they want to have a corporation that they've hired because they have some internal thing. So by that I mean maybe they're trying to lower their salary costs or their payroll costs, but they have more of a budget in a different area that they can put subcontractors into. So they're trying to manage their budgets or their actuals compared to the budget that they made. Or maybe they have been told they can't hire another employee, but they have, like I said, money to spend in other areas, so they could do a subcontractor. Because to the client or to the employer, the person that's hired you, it is a, like, they can just pay out what you've invoiced and then that's it. So for them, it can be beneficial if they're trying to manage their spending like that. But I would really chat with them, really try and get in as an employee if you're going to be an incorporated employee, because even your accounting fees to help you do the bookkeeping and file your corporate taxes, not deductible. You have to just pay for those, or do it yourself. So not ideal, not beneficial to be an incorporated employee. And I don't see a lot of those, like I said, but I always want to check and make sure that if I have a corporation come across my desk, then they only have one client, that I really want to make sure that they're not going to be deemed personal services business, because that's bad news, especially if you file as a regular corporation, because then you've deducted all this stuff, and then they reassess you, and all that gets thrown out, and then you have interest and penalties, you have to pay back all this stuff. Anyways, it's not worth it. It's not fun. So if you think this could be or you have any questions about this, then leave them for me in the comments. I'm happy to chat with you to give you some more clarification on anything that you have questions about. Yeah, if you have any questions at all, you're welcome to leave those in the comments too. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you tomorrow.